my lawyer calls me and he says, hey, I want to let you know they're going to indict you. I'm like, why are you calling me? It's been 11 months since we met with the FBI. I moved on. I have a real estate agent. What are you calling me for? He said, Justin, while you've been playing golf and selling real estate, lying to the FBI and me, your client Keith has been cooperating with the United States government. And as a result of that cooperation, he has signed a plea agreement to one count of conspiracy to commit fraud. And soon there's going to be a Department of Justice DOJ press release stating that he worked with an unnamed, yet to be unindicted co-conspirator at a major brokerage firm. That person is you. So I grew up in Encino, California, a little Jewish enclave outside of Los Angeles, and a lot of opportunity, wonderful parents. We grew up in an area where most people were college educated, judges, doctors, lawyers, though neither of my parents had gone to college. My mom was a paralegal for some really successful lawyers, and my dad owned a hardware store about 2 miles away from USC. And as far back as I could remember, I had every opportunity you can imagine, was given every opportunity to succeed. And that really carried over into baseball. That was a huge portion of my life. The great thing about baseball is it teaches you so much about like failure and humiliation and rejection, but also discipline, commitment, and character, and trying to persevere through some really embarrassing situations. So baseball took me through the Babe Ruth World Series as I reflect back to the glory days. And then baseball gave me an opportunity to play baseball at USC, where I joined the team in 1993. I was not a great athlete at USC. I knew about 7 seconds after I stepped onto the field at USC, my career was over, which meant I was actually going to have to get an education and do something significant. Though USC was incredible, playing with some great athletes that went on to play in the major leagues for a very long time. We lost in the 1995 national championship game against Cal State Fullerton, but I knew my baseball career would end at USC. So my sophomore year at USC, I began cold calling for brokers at Prudential in Beverly Hills. And I originally wanted to go to graduate school to study psychology as my parents went through a really difficult divorce in '93. It was the Rodney King riots, there was a recession, my parents are getting divorced, and the psychologist really helped our family. So I went to USC with the idea I would get a graduate degree in psychology. But then I found out I had a distinguished money manager who worked at Goldman Sachs in downtown Los Angeles. So my mom called him and said, I think my son may have interest in the brokerage industry. Can he come and intern at Goldman? So he said, fine, have him get there at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I get to the 303 South Grand Avenue Goldman Sachs office, my sophomore year at USC. I get there like at 4:30 in the morning. That's insanely early. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I tied it to like right here. So I walk in and he says, so you're the baseball player? And I said, well, I play baseball at USC, but I have interest in the brokerage industry. He said, what do you want to do when you graduate college? I said, well, I'm contemplating graduate school to study psychology. And he said, if you ever want to get into the brokerage business, you have got to get an MBA. If not, you are simply going to be a used car salesman. And I think that was the first sign of me not accepting advice from mentors, for people who had my best interest. And I was very short-sighted because when I saw him trading at Goldman Sachs, 100, 200, 300 million deals, it was very intoxicating. Here I am, 20, hearing these big numbers. I felt like I'm playing baseball in front of 15 or 20,000 people. What I didn't recognize was it took a long time to get to USC baseball, and it takes a long time to become a managing director at Goldman Sachs. I just presumed it happened. So hearing those $100 million orders, I told myself, ain't no way I'm going to graduate school to study psychology. That's a wrap. I'm going to graduate and become a broker. So interning at Goldman Sachs and then cold calling for brokers at Prudential conditioned me to become a young sales executive. But baseball conditioned me through failure. So when I would cold call people and they would hang up on me, drop dead, you're not welcome, you're a salesman, you're useless, I just figured I had to continue making calls, and eventually enough rejection would lead to success. So when I graduated USC in '97, I accepted a position to work at Merrill Lynch in Orange County. I had about $60,000 in student loan debt. Even though I was a student athlete at USC, my scholarship was about 3 cents. And having a very low salary, studying to get my license, having that student loan debt, I immediately began to feel some pressure when I graduated and began to build my career. I was driven to ensure I was at the top of my class. about 9 months into my tenure at Merrill Lynch, I was having some success because I had obtained my securities license, and I was working as a junior broker to a senior broker. And I was raising money, and every account that I was bringing in was going to his account. Like, he was a senior broker. I was learning from him. So after I trained under him for about 9 or 10 months, they let me then go out on my own. And that was a wonderful time in my life, because I was either going to sink or swim, as the cliche holds, on my own merit. I had no salary after 1 year. I was making $2,000 a month. This is in 1997. No $2,000 salary. You're either going to raise money and succeed as a broker, or you're going to flunk out and you're going to go give stock trades at Charles Schwab all day. That was my path moving forward. So after 1 year of being on my own, I had raised about $10 million, but not as a successful cold caller. I was frankly a terrible cold caller. I would call, people would hang up, drop dead, get a job, get a life, you're useless, you're a loser. I'm like, this is terrible. Why did I go to USC to be hung up on all day and be made fun of? So I did something different that I encourage young salesmen to do if they're struggling. It's frankly what I did when I came home from prison. I cold walked. People I learned will respond differently to you in person than they could on the phone. And I recalled a social psychology course I took at USC where there was a study of someone called 100 restaurant owners in the South, the deep South. And they said something akin to, if an African-American walked into your restaurant over the phone, would you serve them? And I think 90% said no. Then 100 African-Americans actually walked into the restaurant to eat. And I think more than 90% of them were actually served. The point is, people respond differently to you in person. So I said, okay, I am a terrible cold caller. Everyone hates me. How about if I put on a nice suit and tie, I look professional, I have my Merrill Lynch brochure, walk in and say, I'm not here to sell you anything today. My name is Justin Paperny. I'm a graduate of USC. I work at Merrill Lynch. The market is rolling. Our analyst in New York has some really interesting ideas. And if you're open to making more money, I'd love to leave you with a brochure of our stock picks, something like that. It's going back 30 years. And people would say, it takes a lot of chutzpah to walk in here, as us Jews say. It takes a lot of courage to walk in here and solicit. Do you not see the no solicitation sign? And I'm like, I do, but I have $60,000 in student loans. I don't know what else I'm going to do. I was supposed to go to business school or graduate school. That's bye-bye. I've got to make this work. I've got to be successful. So it was like a values play. Endure getting laughed at, mocked, and thrown out from some offices, but it was of higher value to me, to be successful, to raise money and hit my numbers. Astonishing how many people shook my hand, called me the next day, bought a stock, and with the NASDAQ rolling, I was able to go from $5 million to $10 million to $20 million really quickly, paid off the student loans. I'm making a few $100,000. I'm succeeding. I bought my first home in Studio City, and I'm doing it all the right way. There's no generating a trade to make a commission. There's no dishonest or treachery or any unethical behavior. I'm doing what's right by my clients. The running joke was people thought I was like retired at 20 because I was never in the office. It's because I was out cold walking and just speaking with my clients from the phone. Even back then, I don't think there were cell phones. I'm just calling from pay phones, doing the best I can as the new flip phones are coming out. But then there was a change, and I didn't like the change, and I wasn't prepared for the change. They wanted us brokers who were once part of a junior partnership. We then went on our own. They then wanted us to partner with senior brokers. And as a former athlete who could succeed or fail on my own and endure and overcome, I did not want to merge my book of business, as small as it was at like $15 or $20 million. That's nothing in the brokerage industry. I did not want to merge with a senior broker who might have $50 or $60 million under management. And I told my branch manager, Ron, that. He said, we'll see. We will reassess in 90 days. So I said, okay, maybe I can be open to this. For the next 90 days, I'm going to assess how many of these junior brokers who have merged their book of business with the senior broker, how well are they doing? Are they actually succeeding? Are they making more money? Are they learning from their mentor, from their senior partner? I'm going to watch and study. So there were some days I would just sit at my cubicle and I would watch these senior brokers supposedly give instruction to the junior brokers. And here's what I learned. There was no instruction. These junior brokers would manage the senior brokers' book of business all day. They stopped prospecting the junior broker, so they weren't bringing in any more money. By being a junior broker and merging the business, guess what? You get a smaller piece of the pie. So now they're making less. And that's when it hit me. These junior brokers thought by merging their book of business with the senior broker, it would lead to like eternal life. Like, oh my God, this managing director at Merrill Lynch is going to be he's my partner. I can tell everyone that. He's been doing it for 40 years. Ain't no way I'm going to flunk out. No, you don't make enough money to live. You're not prospecting. Then one day I'm in the human resource room. I will never forget it to the day that I drop dead. I'm in the human resource room. This vein popped out of my forehead. It was so disgusting. I'm in the human resource room, and this senior broker, Mike's like, oh, I raised $20 million today. I'm like, Mike, that's fantastic. How did you raise $20 million? That's great. Money manager, like divorce attorney, agent? How did you do that? He said, well, that's when I knew. Well, few of the junior guys didn't quite make it, so they're going to go do something else. You know what that means? He took over their book of business. This guy had 3 million, this guy had 4 million, this guy had 5 million, 7 million. They're out of the business. Have a nice week. He takes over their book of business out till they grew. So I believed that the only way these senior brokers were growing their book of business was by leveraging off of the hard work of the junior guys who all flunked out, taking credit for their work, not really mentoring them. And I immediately began to kind of descend to the depths of this business, right? As a student athlete at USC, I was around men of honor, commitment, integrity. It was all about winning. I share the story at USC. I went 0 for 5 in a game against the Japan national team with 3 strikeouts. We even stole the signs. I still couldn't hit it. But after the game, Mike Gillespie said to me, I'm proud of you. No one would know if you were 0 for 5 or 5 for 5. We won today. That's all that mattered. It was about commitment and winning. I felt in the brokerage industry, it was about people advancing their own agenda to the detriment of people they were supposed to be helping. So when my branch manager called me in and said, it's been 90 days, are you ready to merge your book of business? I said, no, that's a wrap. I'm good. They gave me an ultimatum. I don't like ultimatums in life. And I said, I'm going to leave, and I did. So I left Merrill Lynch under a terrible impression of what this brokerage industry is really like. It's every man out for himself. There's no mentoring or partnership. It's all on me. So I left Merrill Lynch, and I went to a very small brokerage firm called Kroll Weeden, which was in the San Fernando Valley in Encino. And when I went to Kroll Weeden, I had a small book of business, maybe $25 million or so. But every one of my clients from Merrill Lynch went with me because I was doing it the right way. So now that I'm at Kroll Weeden, I was finally emboldened enough to reach out to a lot of my friends with whom I played baseball at USC, who are now having really successful careers in the major leagues, like Jeff Jenkins, Brad Fulmer, my very close friend, and others who were thriving. I actually lied during my interview at Merrill Lynch out of USC when they asked if I was going to raise money initially from athletes. I said yes. The truth was I said no, because it's very easy to be rejected when you cold call or cold walk into someone's office you don't know them. But I didn't want to be rejected from my friends. So it took like 2 years, 2.5 years for me to have the courage to call someone and say, I'm going to come to spring training in Florida or Arizona, or I'm in town while you're playing the Yankees. I'd love to see you and have a conversation about how I can help you reach your financial goals. So it took like 2.5 years. But once I began to call them, I learned there's something called a gatekeeper. And it's not a spouse or a parent, it's an agent who vets the accountants, the money manager, the broker. You've got to get past the agent because, of course, so many entertainers, athletes can be exploited and stolen from. So I had to get past the gatekeeper. So I called someone whose name is Danny Lozano. He was a big-time agent at the Beverly Hills Sports Council in downtown Los Angeles. And Danny used to come to USC a lot because he ended up signing a lot of guys that I played baseball with, like Jeff Jenkins and Gabe Alvarez, to name 2. So I called Danny and I go into my sales pitch. Lozo, it's JP. I hope you're well. I've been in the brokerage industry for a few years. I'm doing great. I'd love to spend time with you to help you understand how I can help your players reach their goals. I'm not shooting for home runs here, to use the cliche. Singles or doubles, they already have resources. We want to make sure it grows sustainably over time. He's like, JP, you're too young, man. You've been in the game for 2 years. What are you doing? And I said, oh, give me an opportunity. Do you think every broker has every idea covered? Is that the way it works? He said, where do you work? I said, Kroll Weeden. He's like, Kroll who? I said, Kroll Weeden. He's like, nobody's ever heard of Kroll Weeden. Do you think I can send a high-profile baseball player to a firm I've never heard of before? Of course not. Get to a real firm and then we'll talk. Shortly after that, I called him again. I am a salesman. I am persistent. I believed in what I was doing. So he said, JP, here's what I can do. I have a friend named Kenny. He's a USC graduate like you and me. He's about 7 years older than you. He manages the money for all of my guys. He works at Bear Stearns. I'm going to set up a meeting between you two. Let's see if it's a fit. Now, just a few minutes ago, I said that I was averse to partnerships because I feel as if the senior partner leverages off the mind of the junior broker. But at 25 and 26, sensing an opportunity to maybe go work at Bear Stearns, begin to actually manage money for professional baseball players, even if it's part of a partnership, like our values change in life. It was of higher value to me to end up at a spot like Bear and make real money and really advance. So I was willing to accept the partnership despite my reservations. So I meet Kenny at El Torito Grill in Beverly Hills, and we meet and we hit it off pretty quickly. And we decided pretty quickly that I would become his junior partner at Bear Stearns. Without maybe a month or so of negotiating, just like that, I'm at Bear Stearns as his junior partner. Now, when I went to Bear, I had about $35 or $40 million under management. Things were really growing and the market was helping. He had roughly $100 million under management. So combined, we have 140. We decided when we merged our book of business that I would get 25% of every commission. In other words, Mark, if you call in, you want to buy 500 shares of Amazon and the commission's $1,000, I get $250 or 25%. Kenny, my senior partner, would get 75% or $750. That was fair when we merged our book of business. But something very interesting happened 3, 4, 5, 6 months into our partnership at Bear. I closed a hedge fund that was generating $100,000 to $200,000 every single month. I didn't appreciate that here I am at 26 at Bear, already earning several $100,000. I believed I was earning a lot of money, but I had earned the right to make more. So after roughly 6 months of $100,000 to $200,000 a month in commissions, I did what any viewer who ever wants a raise should do. It's not based on need. I need something. I want something. It should be based off merit. That's how my father raised me. That's what I saw my friends make it to the big leagues. Even if you were a 40th or 50th round pick. My friend Gabe Kapler was a 54th round pick out of Moore Park Junior College. He played in the big leagues for 12 years and managed for the Giants and Phillies through merit. Didn't matter where he was drafted. So I believed if you earn it, you should be rewarded. So I walk into my senior partner's office. There was some arrogance to me. And at first I didn't even say anything. I just put the numbers down in front of him. And I was just waiting for a couple minutes, yeah, he's just going to review this and immediately give me a raise. I've earned it. I've already been here 6 or 7 months. I've really put in the time. I'm 26. So I sit there, and after a minute or two, he's he doesn't say anything. What? I'm do you see what I put in front of you? He's well, what is this? And then I had to say what I didn't think I should have to say, which is when I started here, I was at 25%. And through 6 months, I brought in an account it's done more than $1 million in production. I think I'm entitled to a raise. I think I've earned it. And he looked at me, and when he said, "You're at Bear Stearns because of me," a little patience and gratitude would suit you well. You make more than most people your age. You are here because of me. You would not have closed that account without me. It took me back to that broker at Merrill Lynch who said he raised 15 or 20 million by stealing, in my opinion, from the junior brokers he was supposed to be mentoring. That's how I felt. And I said, this is why I shouldn't have done a partnership. I knew it. So not only did he not give me the raise, there was no appreciation. Some people watching this don't need an appreciation. They do their job well, they get paid. Some people value, thank you. You're a contributing member of our team. Keep up the hard work. You're going to get there. So he never said, I appreciate you. Thank you. And I began to resent him that I'm in at 5, leaving at 10. He's in at 9, leaving at 2, under the idea that he's going to golf at Bel Air or LA Country Club to cultivate relationships with agents and money managers to bring in more money. I resented that I didn't get the raise, that he didn't appreciate me, and I felt pressure to be recognized. And I began to rationalize this unfairness. This is a sickening, treacherous, disgusting industry where everyone is out for themselves. And you can't ever cheat unless you can't cheat unless you see some opportunity. And I cheated years before I ever went to prison or actually broke the law that the government indicted me for, but it put me on this path of bad decision making. And the opportunity came, Mark, when you called a week later and you said, hey, Justin, I see Amazon's rolling, man. They're doing some big stuff out there. I want to buy 5,000 shares of Amazon. Cool, let's do it. We buy it. The commission's $5,000. Remember, I'm only entitled to 25% of the commission, but I found a glitch. If you look hard enough, you're always going to find a glitch. I found a glitch in the accounting system at Bear that enabled me to keep 100% of the commission. Stealing. 2 weeks after that, Amazon's up. You want to sell the 5,000 shares? Great, let's sell. Let's take your money and run. The commission's $3,000, whatever. I'm only entitled to 25% or $750, but I find this glitch that allows me to keep $3,000. I'm stealing commissions in total violation of my partnership agreement. When you engage in crime or you rationalize that you are the one being wronged, you convince yourself that it's okay. And indeed, when I would drive from Century City to my home in Studio City, I would pull over on the side of the road with the old Palm Trio, and the stylist would come out and I would compute how much I had taken in commissions that day relative to how much I'm actually owed if my partner compensated me fairly. And I didn't think I was taking anything to which I had not earned. That's how I had convinced myself that it was okay. But here's something that happens if you engage in crime and you don't get caught. You always fear that you're going to get caught. It's terrible. It's why some people in the white-collar advice community will walk themselves into the U.S. Attorney's office and say, I did it. I can't wait for you to come and get me at 6 a.m. with guns anymore. I can't take it no more. I did it. Arrest me. You fear you're going to get caught. So for like the next 8 or 9 months, every time the phone would ring, I'd think, oh my goodness, it's my branch manager. They found out I took commissions I had not earned. I'm going to be fired. I've already been to Merrill Lynch and Crow Wheaton, now Bear Stearns. Here at 27, I'm going to be out of the business. Every time my partner Kenny would call, oh, he found out. That's it. It's over. I'm done. It began to destroy a lot of parts of my life. My health. I graduated USC as a baseball player, as an athlete. I put on 30 or 40 pounds. I never exercised. I was in a relationship, fiance, engaged, neglected her. She left. I don't blame her. I had been a volunteer in my community. My father ran a business that employed people who had been to prison, who had records. He was always willing to give them a second chance, and I was kind of a part of that. Stopped contributing to my community at all. It was this singular focus on growth and overcoming the wrongs that had come to be my senior partner, and of course, fearing that I would get caught. Fearing that I would get caught, besides impacting my mental health, I began to neglect my clients who gave me my start in the business. Right? All of those cold walking clients along Ventura Boulevard who would give me $500,000, $1 million, $225,000, I began to neglect them for 2 reasons. One, I became enamored with some of our high profile athletes, the baseball players with whom I would travel and see. And 2, I was so concerned about stealing commissions and getting caught, I began to neglect them. And I tell people it's not illegal to treat people differently, though if you're out for your own self-interest, and most of us are, you will pay a heavy price. And I learned the price of neglecting my clients the 16th of June, 2001. My partner, Kenny, who had some issues, to put it lightly, negotiated a significant 7-figure bonus to move our book of business from Bear Stearns in Century City on Avenue of the Stars across the street to Century Park East. So we're going to get a lot of money. We're going to move our book of business. I didn't even care about the bonus as much as I thought this is like the greatest thing that ever could happen to me right now. I've taken these commissions I haven't earned. Nobody found out about it. If I leave Bear Stearns and start anew at UBS, it's like a total clean slate. I'm in a really great spot here. I told Kenny, take the deal. It's fine. He said, well, I'm trying to negotiate with Barry, the branch manager, to get more. I said, just take it. It's going to be great. We'll tell our clients UBS is better for them, more services, more of a global reach than Bear Stearns, which is becoming an old school trading firm. Let's do it. Let's take the money. So we negotiate the deal and we go to UBS the 16th of June, 2001, and we have this huge bonus. And let me tell you what happens when you get a big bonus. They expect you to produce. Okay, they're just not going to give you millions of dollars because they like you. They didn't care at that point that I went to USC or the prior success that I have. They're giving you money based on what they project you to do moving forward. So we get that bonus the 16th of June, 2001. And then, of course, something terrible happened. About 6 months in, only about 50% of our clients had transferred their book of business from Bear Stearns over to UBS. Like, I'm calling people. Hi, Kay, it's Justin. Hope you're well. I've sent you the transfer paperwork several times. I haven't heard back from you. And then I realized when I was taking commissions I hadn't earned and neglecting my clients, and then when I went to UBS, that was an opportunity for them to get rid of me, to purge themselves from me. Because when you leave a brokerage firm, here's what happens. Within about 7 seconds, the branch manager hands all of your accounts to brokers. It's technically the brokerage firm's account, not yours. So we leave to go from Bear to UBS on a Friday. We start anew on a Monday, but we started calling immediately. But so are dozens of brokers at Bear Stearns who have inherited your account. They want to keep your account. So they begin to call and say what they will do, how they manage the account, flaws that they have seen in the way that it was managed, things that they could do better. In fact, I'm available to come by right now and talk to you about your account. It's like, wow. So when I went to UBS and only about half of our clients transferred over, it's because many of them chose to stay with their new broker at Bear Stearns. And one flat out said to me, we think you're kind, we think you're sharp, we think you have good intentions, but we feel like you forgot about us. As you grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger, you forgot about someone like me who helped you get started. I found someone at Bear that's more responsive. We've decided to stay with her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, half of our business. Now UBS begins to put pressure on us every single month. Where's the commissions, guys? Where are the numbers? This is the book of business we bought. You are not producing. So right out of the gate, the pressure to produce, beginning to see broker friends of mine who got similar multi-million-dollar bonuses getting let go. UBS would claim for ethical violations, nonsense. It's because they weren't producing. When you get a bonus like that, they can claw back that money if they let you go. It's like a 5-year, it's called an employee forgivable loan. They give you the money, they forgive 20% of that loan every single year. You are still responsible to pay the taxes on what you get every single month. So what I mean by that is, let's just say it's $1 million bonus and they forgive 20% a year. That's $200,000. My paycheck every single month would take out the taxes for that $200,000. So some months I'd have to make, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 before I ever saw a penny in my paycheck because it went to taxes and 401k and insurance and other things. So I'm feeling pressure to try to get the numbers up, but I couldn't. Even if a few stragglers came over from Bear to UBS, I couldn't get the numbers up. And that changed. That changed the 16th of June, 2002, 1 year to the day after I went to UBS. I received a phone call, I'll never forget it. I was in my office at UBS, and a gentleman named Keith called, and he said, hey, Keith, it's Justin. I think I'm going to leave Bear Stearns. Can I transfer my $6 million hedge fund to you? I said, of course you can. I'll come over tonight and get the paperwork signed. Now, I knew when Keith called that he was someone who was dishonest. I had worked with him years earlier at Crow Wheaton, and I would hear things that he would say on the phone to close a deal. In other words, Mark, if you were skeptical about buying Cisco or Microsoft, you'd say, Mark, you're the only one I'm really telling right now, so I just want you to know. I've heard a little something about a potential merger with Microsoft, someone they're going to buy. He would say something that would compel someone to invest in the stock so he would generate a commission and get paid. I share this because when I took his money the 16th of June, 2002, I knew that it would end badly. I knew that he was dishonest, but a part of me was like, who am I to judge him? I too have made bad decisions. My job as a broker is to raise money and execute trades. But I knew that it would end badly. Now, when you're raised with opportunity and a lot of privilege with wonderful parents and coaches that hold you accountable through baseball, you don't think prison accountability. You don't think this is going to end badly in prison. You don't think that at all. But I suspected working with him would lead to problems, but it was of higher value for me to justify this bonus. I didn't want to get fired and have UBS come after the money. So despite my reservations of him as a human being, I took his money. And we got off to a great start. He transferred over the $6 million, and the first month he does $100,000 in production. The second month, $200,000 in production. The third month, $300,000 in production. I'm like, wow, we are back. My partner was so grateful, believe it or not, without even having to ask. We agreed to a higher percentage of commissions for this one client because it was taking so much of my time as I was executing the hedge fund manager's trades all day. It was very busy and it was cutting into my ability to prospect. Kenny was doing more of that work. So he was doing heavy commissions every single month. But 6 months into our relationship, something bad had happened. The $6 million he raised, he lost all of it. And we're generating at least $100,000 a month in production. It's not illegal to lose money. But what happened next was very concerning. He then went out and raised another $6 million. It's like, oh, the money would come in. The money would come in. How was he doing it? How was he raising money? Of course we knew how he was raising money. He was lying to people Because Mark, if he showed up at your home and said, hey, Mark, Keith here, I'd love to manage your $3 million. And you'd say, well, Keith, how are you doing this year, bud? How's the rate of return on your hedge fund? If he said, Mark, look, I'm down 100% this year. Every dollar I raise, I lose. Give me a second chance. I think I'll do a great job. You'd say, get out of my home. I never want to see you again. So we knew if he brought in $6 million and he lost it all, and if he then raised another $6 million, he only did that by lying to people, because no rational investor would give money to a hedge fund manager if they knew that investor lost every damn penny they raised. So we begin to rationalize and convince ourselves it is okay to accept his money. Why? One, he executes the trades as the hedge fund manager, not me. Every ticket on every trade says unsolicited. One, another rationalization that are part and parcel to any white-collar crime. Two, they're his clients. They're his clients investing money into his hedge fund. We do not have individual accounts of his investors. We don't know their names. We don't know who they are or where they're from. They are sending money to his hedge fund. His hedge fund is a client of UBS. It's really that simple. So I execute the trades unsolicited. He's managing the money. He's soliciting and raising the money, and I'm never there. Who am I to police my client? My job is to bring in money, generate commissions, produce. No problems. But we knew he was a liar. No question. But those concerns didn't dissuade me from continuing to execute trades. I liked the commissions and I was moving my way back up the leaderboard. But that $6 million, he lost again. So let's assess where we are here. About 12, 15 months into my relationship with him at UBS, he raises $12 million and he loses it with heavy, heavy commissions, complex trades, massive losses. Such a bad trader. In fact, when he would go long a stock, my partner and I would do the opposite trade and we would make money. That's how bad a trader he was. He's going long Microsoft, we're shorting it, and we made money. Terrible. We didn't think about firing him. We liked the commissions. We didn't think about alerting the investors who were losing money. We liked the commissions. Though we did get concerned that we would get sued civilly if his investors continued to lose money, because they're not going to get it from him. He ain't got 3 cents. So I walked to my senior partner's office. I said, man, we kind of have to protect ourselves here. If he continues to lose money, he's paying a lot of commissions. And at some point, these people are going to find out they're losing money. And he said, what do you have in mind? I said, well, I kind of have an idea. He said, what's the idea? I said, well, I think we should get management involved, kind of provide you some protection. Let's get management involved. And I've written a draft of a little kind of like indemnification agreement, disclosure document. I thought this document, by the way, would keep me out of prison. It led to my downfall. So this document I wrote a draft of, and I took it to UBS Compliance in Century City in Stamford, Connecticut. And the document says, if you, Mark, or anyone in the world chooses to invest in this hedge fund, you do so at your own volition. Justin Paperny, Kenny, UBS, we do not solicit, endorse, or recommend this investment. If you lose money, that is on you. We are not soliciting this investment. Do you understand? So UBS looks at it, they like it. They kind of applaud my ingenuity in keeping this account alive so the gravy train of commissions can continue while simultaneously protecting ourselves from any fallout, namely if investors sue. They rewrite the letter a little bit the way that lawyers do, as you would imagine. And then I call Keith, my client, the hedge fund manager, and I said, hey, anytime anyone ever signs up for your hedge fund, anytime at all, even though they are writing the check directly to your hedge fund and they do not have an account with us, you get this disclosure document signed stating we do not endorse or recommend this investment. So he's like, sure, no problem. Of course, I knew, because I'm not stupid, that when he would get paperwork signed for people to invest in his hedge fund, he would probably bury that disclosure document amongst 30 documents they needed to sign. You just slide it in, they sign it, distract him, probably dismiss it as standard operating procedure. They sign it, we get the document. It gave us confidence that we were totally protected to let this hedge fund and the commissions continue while protecting ourselves from any fallout that would come. Millions in, millions out, commissions, disclosure document. I had yet to actually meet anyone. I'd actually yet to spend time with anyone considering investing in his hedge fund. And there were 2 meetings that changed the course of my life. And the first one wasn't as severe as the second, truth be told. The first one, Keith called me and said, I need you to attend a meeting with me. And I said, what meeting? And he said, there's an investor named John who's thinking of selling his hedge fund. And I'm going to buy it from him and give him 5%. So what happened was Keith was struggling to raise money from individual investors, and the amounts weren't big enough. You get 100, you get 100, you get 200. You can't get to 5 million enough to trade. So here's what he did. He found older, quasi-successful money managers, 50, 60, 70 years old, who maybe had 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, certainly weren't thriving, who were going to retire, and who had no exit. No one was going to buy their small little $5 million book of business except Keith. So Keith found them and said, hi, John, you're retiring. Okay. I'd love to manage your book of business. How about I give you 5% or $250,000 for this book of business you've worked hard to acquire? So he began to set up meetings with small-time money managers where he was going to buy their book of business. And he began to buy some 500, a million, something like that. But one of them actually wanted to meet with the team at UBS. Like, who's executing the trades? Keith, I trust you. Who are these people at UBS? So Keith called and said, I need you to attend this meeting with someone named John. I'd like Kenny, my senior partner, to attend as well. And I was like, dude, I don't really want to attend the meeting. I'm good. I'm okay. And essentially he said, without having to say it, I generate a lot of commissions for you. I've been a friend to you. I know how much I've helped your business. I know you make more on this one account. And I presume there's a lot of brokers in Bear Stearns or UBS or in Century City who would love a guy that does $200,000 a month and doesn't really question the commissions. He didn't even have to say that. It was inferred. It was understood. I knew what he was thinking without even having to hear it. So I said, okay, man, I'll attend the meeting. The first of two that put me on a path to federal prison. So I attend the meeting at Century City on a Friday afternoon. It's Kenny, my senior partner, Keith, the client, me, and this investor named John. He's got like a $5 million hedge fund. So we're having some sushi, and Kenny, my senior partner, says to John, this money manager, so why are you thinking of selling your hedge fund to Keith? The worst possible question you could possibly imagine. I gave him a look like, are we together here? We know he loses every penny, man. Like, why would you ask that question later? He's like, I don't know, it just kind of felt like the appropriate thing to ask. I'm sorry. So John says to all of us, I've seen the rate of return on the hedge fund. And as later stated in my plea agreement, performance sells itself. I heard it. It's different when you execute trades and you don't see anyone's face and you just rationalize because the trades are unsolicited in corporate compliance or the lawyers are on board with it. It's different. But when you see someone who is going to invest $5 million under the presumption of a return that does not exist, it changes things. And rather than say, what performance are you talking about, my man? Or run, get out. I kind of did what the feds would call like a little bit of a willful blindness. Like, I don't see nothing. Like, what just happened? Willfully turning the other way. I didn't hear anything. I just kind of abruptly ended the meeting. Hey guys, I got to kind of get back up. I got something. Abruptly end the meeting. Couple of minutes, do my best to weasel my way out of there as a coward without addressing the reality that if he invests money, he's going to lose it. No question. No question. I'm upstairs with Kenny, my partner, and I'm like, this dude's going to give $5 million. And I don't fault him. I respond, my choices are my own. Kenny said, well, he's going to sign the disclosure document if he invests. That's not a rationalization or justification to take the money. I knew that it was wrong. I knew that it was wrong. I knew that we should have fired our client long ago. But at 27 or 28, I convinced myself I'm already on my fourth firm. I don't want to start over. I've done the cold walking out of USC. I don't want to do it again. Very short-term thinking, like for today or tomorrow, without recognizing what good is it to make big money today, $100,000, $200,000 in some months, if it's to your long-term detriment, prison, conviction, losing of your licenses, the devastation that accompanies a white-collar crime conviction. I didn't think of that at 28. All I thought was I want to prove worthy of the bonus, of the numbers, turn the other way and convince ourselves it's okay to execute these trades. And the money came in. And for the first time, he actually made a little bit of money, but of course he began to lose that too. And now, much like I feared that I would get caught at Bayer when I took commissions, the same anxiety kicks in at UBS. This is going to come undone. Despite the disclosure document, they are going to find out. How did I end up here again? I thought I learned my lesson. I said I would never do it again, yet here I am. What is wrong with me? There's some fundamental flaw in my brain that compels me to do things even when I know they're wrong. Why? Because I convinced myself the culture allowed it. That's how you sleep. I convinced myself my branch manager, Rich, and Ron, and Paul, and my partner, Kenny, endorsed or allowed it, and I'm younger, and it's okay, and they've been in the game longer. I knew that it was wrong every step of the way. And then he knows when you're dealing with someone who's unethical, as am I. Forget, don't even call it unethical, criminal. When you're in cahoots and now you're helping one another, they double down. They ask for more help. And he did. And he called me. And he said, hey, dude, do me a favor. I need you to attend one more meeting with me. And it's like, oh, what? Another meeting. What meeting? What's the meeting? Yeah, there's someone who gave me several $1 million several years ago, and they're concerned about their investment. And they'd like to meet with you. I'm like, oh, let me get this straight. When did they give you the money? Before I hired you. Okay. Do they have any money left? Some money. Okay, fine. Why am I there? They just want to know who executes the trades at UBS. Fine. So we meet, I believe, at 16439 Ventura Boulevard in Encino. I attend this meeting, and it's like an 88-year-old investor. And he has like 2 advisors there with him. And it's Keith, the hedge fund manager, and me. I told my partner, Kenny, I'll handle this one. I got it. I didn't really want him to know what I was doing, as bad as it was. So the meeting opens up, and one of this 88-year-old elderly investor's advisors looks right at me and says, Justin, do you think an 88-year-old investor should have $3 million in a basket of growth stocks? And I said, okay, wait a second. Before the meeting started, I looked at how much money my client's hedge fund had, and it was less than $1 million in the hedge fund. So now this one investor thinks that he has $3 million in this hedge fund. So I try to dodge the question. I said, well, I don't manage the money. Keith does. And he said, Justin, let me ask you again. Do you think an 88-year-old investor should have $3 million in a basket of growth stocks? So rather than say, you don't have $3 million, there's less than $1 million in the fund, what are you talking about? I said, well, if it were me, I would manage the money more. If it were my money, I'd be more conservative with it. Fixed income, steady stream of cash. He said, Justin, I agree. I agree with you. Perfect. Will you help us allocate the $3 million that remains in this hedge fund the way that you said you would if you were 88 years old? And I'm sitting there with all eyes on me. My damn client, Keith, knows I'm going to help him. He knows I got him covered because of the commissions he generates. That's good. And I was like uncomfortable, nervous, weak, and I said, sure. So I get up, and there's like a chalkboard in the office, and I begin to allocate $3 million that doesn't actually exist. And afterwards, they shook my hand and said, please get to the allocation immediately. I call Keith aside. I'm like, this old man's money, what happened? And I learned when Keith hired me, that man's money had been gone for years through the hedge fund he managed at Bear Stearns. When he hired me, that man's $3 million had already come and gone. Keith had spent it. It's lost it. So when I then meet with him 2 years later, he still thought the money existed, giving him fraudulent documents attesting to a return that didn't exist. And then I allocate money in this room that did not exist. And I said, well, implement it the next day. And when that meeting was over, I knew that it was simply a matter of time. Still wasn't thinking prison, but I was thinking it was a matter of time before this came undone and it would blow up. And that happened the 15th of December, 2004. I was on a lunch date at Houston's in Century City, and my branch manager called. And he said, get your ass back to the office now. And I said, Rich, I'm coming on a lunch date right now. I'll be back in about 90 minutes. He said, get that back to the office now. He hangs up the phone. So I lied to this nice woman I was with. I said, there's an important client waiting for me at the office. I have to go. And as I made this walk from Houston's in Century City through the Century City Mall back to the UBS office, I knew my life was going to change forever. Frankly, I knew my life would change when I took his money June 16, 2002, because of the type of person that he was. Didn't think prison bad, but I knew my life was about to change. I knew it when I took his money. I knew it. So I walk in. And it's my branch manager, Rich, my senior partner, Kenny, who's now begun dating our assistant, Kate, which is a nightmare, and like 2 compliance managers, and me. I walk in. My branch manager says, sign your name for me 8 times. I'm like, all right. So he puts a document in front of me. I've signed Justin Matthew Paperny 8 times. Then I'm like, what am I signing? And I learned that day, one of the advisors for the elderly investor had sent a fax to my branch manager, and the cover letter simply said, is this true? Then I looked at the second page of the fax that said, if the GLT venture fund ever goes out of business or goes belly up, UBS will step in and ensure your investment for its full market value. Signed, Justin Matthew Paperny. So I learned when my client Keith would come to the office, on the way out, he would grab UBS letterhead. And when his investors grew concerned about their investment, he would send them this fax with my forged signature, giving them comfort that if he goes out of business, we'll insure it, their portfolio. Hence the cover letter that said, is this true? So that's when everyone starts to get righteous. That's the way white-collar crime works. Okay, you immediately deflect and dodge. You don't assume any responsibility. You begin to blame. And everyone's out for their own self-interest. So then you have Kenny, my senior partner, going, well, I think Justin's more involved in like the day-to-day. I'm like, what? I thought we're partners here. What are you talking about? Justin's more involved in the day-to-day. Then my branch manager's like, well, who's this Kevin guy or Carl? I'm like, it's Keith. The hedge fund manager is Keith. Kevin or Keith? It's Keith. My branch manager's playing dumb, like he doesn't know who this account is, even though he was vested and involved in the disclosure letter. The branch manager, Paul, off his game. Do not go into compliance if you are a people pleaser, which he was, because he could be manipulated with Dodgers or Lakers seats or tickets to a good concert, because he knew he should have fired this account years ago. Now he's concerned for his job. He should have been, because he lost it. Then everything comes to me. Well, Justin, aren't you more involved in the day-to-day? Yes, I am. Justin, would you feel comfortable speaking with corporate compliance the next day to help them understand your understanding of this hedge fund? I'd be happy to. Thinking that we were all aligned, I foolishly spent 8 hours the next day with UBS corporate counsel. At the end of that 8 hours, they say to me, we don't want you to come in until this is resolved. I'm like, what does that even mean? Don't come in. What part don't you get? You don't come in till it's resolved. Okay. Well, what about Kenny? Don't worry about Kenny. I didn't know that he lawyered up. Good for him. I don't begrudge him. He made the right decision. A government investigation was beginning. I didn't know what those words were. I didn't know what a Ponzi scheme was. I didn't know anyone that had been to prison. He was smarter. Good for him. He avoided prison because of it. He gets a lawyer. Instead, I interview with corporate counsel. They tell me not to come in until January 15th, 2005. I get a call from my branch manager that says, come on in. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to get my desk back. Time to get back to work. We've all moved on from this really unfortunate experience. And I walk in to the 30th floor, and 2 of the hugest dudes are standing outside my office. They couldn't even take me to the office to fire me first. I just see these 2 huge guys standing outside my office, and like they're starting to take things out of like the corner office. They got the USC diploma. They got the photo from the golf tournaments. They're pulling things out. They're stacking it up. I'm like, this is not great. This is bad. So I walk into my branch manager's office. He reaches out and he says, we've decided to let you go for inconsistent answers you gave last month. And I said, let me get this straight. You're not firing me for working with this hedge fund manager who raised and lost millions, and he gave us a lot of commissions, and where we worked to cover up with this disclosure document that all of us were a part of. No, you're firing me for inconsistent answers I gave last month in that interview. Yes, I need your security card. Those 2 guards are going to walk you downstairs from your office, get into the car, have a nice day, thank you. So I make this walk, and people are like, oh, I'll call you, it's going to be fine. Nobody calls, nobody cares. Everyone gets on with their own life. So rather than begin to accept any sense of responsibility, that I was culpable for people losing money and I could have stopped it earlier. I went into like self-preservation mode, that I'm a victim here. It's a terrible way. It's terrible to live as a victim, not when you have the opportunities that I had, that I'm a victim here. UBS is exploiting me. And worse, within about 2 weeks, they come after me for the balance of my bonus because I was let go for cause. And they immediately begin to point me out as a rogue employee who acted alone. In fact, after I pled, if you read the Department of Justice press release, you will see a UBS spokesman claim that I had acted alone. They have their own interest to move on with business and to hold someone accountable. You can't put UBS in prison, but you could put a person. They wanted to move on and make sure that I took the fall. So rather than lawyer up responsibly and own what happened, I lie. I call all of these clients with whom I'd worked for many, many years, and despite having hundreds of clients and always doing it the right way, no complaints, never generating a commission never doing a trade just to get a commission, always did it the right way except for this one client. Doesn't excuse what I did, but it was this one guy. So I call them, but rather than tell them the truth, I lie to them because Kenny, my partner, insinuated that if I help keep a lot of these clients, retain them, he'll pay me down the road. It's like, all right, well, that's kind of a win for me. Okay, so I call them and say, I've decided to go work with some hedge funds and private equity to help them raise money, which is something I was very successful at doing. I don't tell them the truth. So many of them stay behind with Kenny. So the retention was very good for him and I go on my way. So the upside for Kenny was his partnership interest has gone higher. I've now played a role in helping these clients stay behind with the understanding he would write me a big check down the road. Didn't change that I lied. So then nothing happens for like 3 months. I'm at home thinking of what I'm going to do next. A good friend, Sam Pompeo, who sells real estate in Calabasas, is like, just come and work for me, man. Just sell real estate with me. It's going to be great. So as I'm contemplating what to do next, the FBI shows up in my home, April 28th, 2005. And they walk in like with almost like every email I'd ever sent at Bear Stearns or UBS. It is incredible, the work they do in researching and building a case. And I later learned, because I've done some work with the FBI in Virginia, that there are agents whose job is only to read our text messages, our emails, our Signal messages, our WhatsApp messages, and tie them together into a conspiracy. So when UBS walked in, when the FBI walked into my home, April 28th, 2005, with like binders up to as tall as I am, I knew that it was serious. And for the first time, I actually reached out to a lawyer. And I hire a lawyer, and we meet with the FBI like a month later. And a problem was I didn't know how to hire a lawyer. I didn't know anyone that's been to prison or been in trouble before, so I didn't know the right questions to ask. I didn't know how to hold a lawyer accountable. I didn't understand my story, so I really wasn't in a position to say what I did other than blame UBS, my partner Kenny, my client Keith, and my branch manager. So a lawyer can't really help or advocate for you if they don't know the truth, and I didn't know what the truth was. So when I met with the FBI, they asked me a question right out of the gate. And they said, Justin, do you remember a press release stating that your client Keith's hedge fund averaged 27% a year? And I said, what? I was really off my game. I was caught off guard. I said, what? They said, do you remember a press release stating that your client's hedge fund averaged 27% a year? And as I'm thinking of what to say, I reflect back to when I was a broker at UBS. And an email had come in from my client's assistant, Patricia, stating that his hedge fund was averaging 27% a year. Keith had issued this press release to try to raise money, and I read it at UBS, and I deleted it. So as I'm contemplating what to say, I'm like, well, okay, they could probably show the email came in, but how could you prove I read it? There are people watching this right now who might have gotten a text or email that they're going to delete. How could someone prove that they read it? So I knew that I had gotten it, but I didn't want to acknowledge that I read it or that I knew. But I deleted it as quickly as it came in. So when the FBI agent, Paul Bertrand, said to me, do you remember a release? Rather than follow the advice of my lawyer, who would say, if you don't know, say, I don't recall, I'm not sure. I was very emphatic in saying, no, I don't. I just wanted to get it over with. I wanted to get the meeting over with. I wanted to get on with my life. I felt that I had suffered enough. UBS was coming after me for the money. I had lost my job. I'm in a new industry. Justin suffered enough here, people. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to get past this. So he asked me again. And had I told the truth, I wouldn't have gone to prison. All I had to say was the truth. Yes, I remember it. I remember reading it. I remember the press release, Agent Bertrand. Instead, I said no. And he gave me a look I'll never forget that was sort of like, I gave you a chance, man. Don't ever say I didn't give you a chance. Because then he reaches over into these binders and he pulls out a document. And he says, do me a favor, Justin, would you read this? And I read it. And I'm in this email, I'm arguing with my client, Keith. And I said in the response to Keith, I enjoyed your press release talking about the 27% guaranteed return fund. And then Agent Bertrand said, would you read it again? Because I just heard you say a couple of minutes ago you didn't recall this email. Could you just read it one more time? He's kind of playing with me. He's having fun with me. I read it again. And my lawyer ends the meeting. And like we're outside the meeting and my lawyer's like, well, you just lied to federal agents. You're obstructing a federal investigation. This is really bad. So I wasn't prepared. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I didn't think they were going to ask me that question. And then nothing happens for a year. It's incredible. Much like I thought I got away with taking the commissions from my partner, Kenny, I presumed after meeting with the FBI and not hearing from them for a very long time that they'd forgotten about me. And then it was a Friday afternoon. I'm showing property. I got my real estate license. I'm showing property to my old friend, Kourtney Kardashian, before she's famous, before nobody knows her then, no money then. She's looking at very small pieces of property then for next to nothing. Just opened up her store Dash in Calabasas, no money. I'm showing property, and my lawyer calls me, and he says, hey, I want to let you know they're going to indict you. I'm like, why are you calling me? It's been 11 months since we met with the FBI. I moved on. I have a real estate agent. What are you calling me for? He said, Justin, while you've been playing golf and selling real estate, lying to the FBI and me, your client Keith has been cooperating with the United States government. And as a result of that cooperation, he has signed a plea agreement to one count of conspiracy to commit fraud. And soon there's going to be a Department of Justice DOJ press release stating that he worked with an unnamed, yet to be unindicted co-conspirator at a major brokerage firm. That person is you. So while you've been doing whatever the hell you've been doing for the last year, Keith has been cooperating with the feds. So what does this mean? What happens next? Why are you calling me? It's been so long. He said, you need to wrap your arms around this. The plea agreement he will sign, Keith, they're going to indict you. You can go to trial, you'll lose, I won't take you. Well, and I'm like, well, how long would I serve in prison? This is while I'm supposed to be selling real estate. Like going to look at tiny little condos in Woodland Hills. He's like, well, you'll go to prison for 5 years. I'm like, cool. How long will he go to prison for? 2 decades? Awesome. And that's when I got a sense of the twisted nature of the criminal justice system. I don't begrudge cooperators, but that's when I learned those who cooperate and inform tend to get better agreements with the government. So even though he was the orchestrator of it, because he cooperated and was in the good graces of the Department of Justice, cooperating against me, he was going to get that cooperation credit, or later it's called a 5K1 letter from the government. So I said, all right, my lawyer said, he'll get 2 years as of right now, you'll get 5. And then I'll never forget getting off the phone with my lawyer. He said, come in next week and bring me a check. I'll never forget getting off the phone and thinking like, now I'm just supposed to get on with my life and I'm just supposed to call an agent and say, is the lockbox on this property or can I get in? Is it appointment only while my friend's sitting in the car trying to do my job? Get on with my life after you just get a phone call that says they're going to send you to prison for 5 years? And I went and I saw my lawyer the next week and I gave him a check and he helped me understand the government's version of events. And of course, I tried to defend myself, that I was the scapegoat. UBS was pointing me out as a rogue employee. And I said, just give me one more chance with the government. Give me one more chance to go in there and help them understand what really happened, my perception of events. And he said, you blew that opportunity. You lied to them. They want nothing to do with you. They want nothing to hear. You have nothing of value to give them. I'm very sorry. I'm going to negotiate the plea, continue to sell real estate, make money, and I'll have the plea agreement to you within the next 60 days or so. So during this time, I really began to spiral and deal with a great deal of regret and shame over how I got here at 30 years old. And I would sit in my home all day, and I developed a terrible sense of envy. Envy is it's a wicked thing, because envy is like you don't want someone else to have it. After I learned that I was going to plead guilty and probably go to prison, I began to avoid friends who were doing it the right way, who were honest and ethical and building a business, getting married, having children. I avoided Mother's Day one year because I didn't want to hear my parents ask me, what's happening? Are you going to prison? Is this going to go away? Envy is a terrible, terrible thing. It destroys a lot of lives. It destroyed my life for a long time. I did not want to endure the consequences that followed my bad decisions. I wanted any way out of it. But the only way was to sign a plea agreement, plead guilty in front of Judge Wilson in 2007. And then in 2008, I was sentenced. But I got one big break, the only break that led to me not getting 4 or 5 years to 18 months in prison. After I pled, I learned that my client, Keith, the hedge fund manager, had been indicted on new charges. He was supposed to turn money over to the government. He tried to hide it. He got caught. He got indicted. So the government came to me and said, we're going to give you a second chance at veracity, not with the Department of Justice, but with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Mid-Wilshire. Two very fair, honest government executives, Cindy Nexon and Bob Wilshire. Bob Tessero, who I know follow my work. They said, we want you to spend time with them. They want to know how a fraudster like Keith could pull a ruse on UBS for so long and you think that it's okay. They want to understand the culture at UBS that allowed this to happen. So my lawyer said to me, this is the avenue you have to maybe avoid prison. So for 1 year, from February 2007 until I was sentenced in February 2008, I spent about 100 hours with the Securities and Exchange Commission, helping them understand how this happened. And as a result of that time with the SEC, at great expense, because you got two lawyers to the left and right of you, it's $600 an hour. That's $130,000 a year of meetings with the SEC. When I signed my retainer agreement, I didn't know that it was only criminal. SEC is civil. It didn't cover that. And before sentencing, the SEC wrote a letter that said, based on my time with the SEC, they do not view UBS as a victim of the offense. They believe UBS to be culpable and involved because UBS was taking the position that I was a rogue employee who acted alone, and because UBS paid $8.5 million to all of the investors turned victims, UBS was saying I should be responsible for the rest of my life to pay that money back. So when SEC said, no, they are culpable, they are involved, they are not a victim, the Department of Justice agreed, and UBS gave up the claim that they were a victim. They did not make an argument that they were entitled to the $8.5 million. The government, in my sentencing memorandum from the DOJ, referenced that they view UBS as culpable. So that really changed my sentencing in front of Judge Wilson, because you're going to get sentenced differently when you owe $500,000 versus $8.5 million, because it's a large part about victims. That was because of my work with the SEC. So when I was sentenced, Judge Wilson said to me, that sentencing day is a tough day, man. It's my own fault. I joke, I'm writing a new little book called After the Fall, and in chapter 1 I describe how I had bought like a new suit for sentencing like 2 months before, but just through like these late night runs to In-N-Out Burger and all the donuts, by the time I got sentenced, the suit was too tight. Even a button popped while I was getting sentenced. Like, it was so tight, the button popped, and I had like the red marks around my waist. I'm like, just sentence me to prison after all. I'm so uncomfortable. The suit was already too tight. I'm getting sentenced. The suit is huge. There are victims in the front row demanding that I go to prison, demanding that I go to prison. My mom is there. Totally regret my mom going there. I'm so grateful my dad didn't show up at sentencing. So glad he wasn't there. And my co-defendant, who had been taken into custody after they rearrested him, got sentenced before me, and he got 5 years in prison. And then it was my time. And I had done nothing to really influence Judge Wilson to show that I was a candidate for leniency. Like so many of the good dudes I met in jail, I just relied on the high-priced lawyers to say that I'm a first-time nonviolent offender. I've accepted responsibility. I've been working. Good character reference letters, but nothing that really showed why I was a candidate for leniency. I outsourced all the work. I was lazy. And he essentially told me that. When I was sentenced, he said, I'm tired of salesmen turning the other way for money. Most don't get caught. You did. I'm going to make an example out of you, and I'm going to send you to prison. And I even asked my lawyer, I'm like, well, where are we going to go? And he said, well, there are 2 camps in Southern California. And my defendant had asked for Lompoc. I said, okay, where am I going to go? And my lawyer said, well, they're not going to send you to Lompoc because he cooperated against you. They're going to put you in another prison. I'm like, which one? He's like, well, the other one in Southern California is Taft Federal Prison Camp. I'm like, great. I get sentenced to 18 months. My lawyer asks for Taft. Judge Wilson recommends it. About 3 weeks later, I get designated. And 3 years to the day after the FBI showed up at my home on April 28, 2005, I self-surrendered to the minimum security camp at Taft for 18 months on April 28, 2008. And I was not prepared for prison, to put it lightly. I didn't know anyone that had ever gone. And as I made my drive with my mom and brother through Bakersfield into Taft, I had what I presume so many people have before they go into prison, like this last huge prison meal at a Carl's Jr. adjacent to a gas station, the Western bacon cheeseburger, the cookies next to the cash register, the fries, the onion rings. I felt totally sick. I ate like I had a date with the electric chair, no joke. You've never seen anything like it. I was finally like, just get me to prison. I got to get credit for time served. Because as a defendant, when you're out on bond, waiting and wondering what the sentence will be for more than 3 years, you already feel like you're in prison. You just don't get credit for it. So there's a calming nature that comes with getting sentenced to prison because at least you have clarity. And at least I'm surrendering to prison today, but I'm finally going to get credit for days served. I can't wait anymore. So my mom and brother drive me to the federal prison in Taft, and I'm, maybe 40 pounds heavier and really miserable and making blanket promises to my family about what I'll do, but I had no idea what I was going to do. And I'm still the victim. I lost my licenses because of this. I lost my reputation, my money, my career. It's not really my fault. And then when I immediately got to prison, I reached out and I tried to shake hands with a guard. I did. I'm like, hi, I'm Justin Paperny here to self-surrender. And he said, we don't shake hands with inmates. So I told my brother, I said, okay, you guys, my brother and mom, I think it's time to leave. So guards are kind of laughing at me, I guess. Like, oh, this guy's not ready. I was not ready. And then they take you in through processing, tons of questions, the bureaucratic questions they ask, any mental health issues, are you suicidal, are you willing to cooperate, anything we need to know, all of these questions. And then about 2 hours later, they take you from the low security prison to the minimum security camp. And just like that, like I'm in prison. And everyone knows that you're the new prisoner because you're wearing the Vans and the gray outfit. And what hit me or struck me initially was how happy so many guys seemed to be, like smiling, running the track, walking around. I couldn't believe that these guys were in prison, yet they seemed so at ease and so comfortable. I didn't understand it. And that first day, I recall walking up to the dorm, and I'll never forget the smell, because you have 125 guys in there, cooking in the microwave or out of their locker. Inside of this dorm, I immediately walked to the restrooms. I wanted to see what the showers and toilets are like. I had a concern, would it be anything like I've seen on television or anything like that? So I get a lay of the land, so to speak. And just like that, I'm trying to adjust to my first day in minimum security camp, where a lot of people are disinterested. They don't care. They've seen so many of us come and go. Others immediately try to get into your business, so to speak. Who are you? How long are you here for? Let's go for a walk around the track. I'll tell you my story. You can tell me yours. That was a regret I had that first day. I'm walking around the track for 2 hours with some guy who I don't know. I'm listening to his story. And it was a mistake because I later learned he was someone who complained a lot. He wrote a lot of cop-outs. He spent time with staff, and I didn't want to be associated with a guy like that. So I didn't really understand my environment or be careful about the friendships that I was forming. And that first night, I recall, at like midnight, someone starts tapping on my shoulder. And I'm like, my God, this is right out of a prison movie. Like, someone's tapping on my shoulder at midnight. This is a minimum security camp. My lawyer said no violence. Is something bad about to happen? And that's when I got exploited from a prison hustler for the first and only time. I didn't remember that shortly after I got to prison, someone named David came up to me and said, hey, would you like a better mattress? I'm like, what's wrong with the mattress? He's like, it's this thick. He's like, how'd you like to go to this? I'm like, from here to here, that's like a really big improvement. Of course, I would love a bigger mattress. He's like, okay, I'll bring you one later. I didn't know that later meant at 12 p.m. tapping on my shoulder, telling me, hurry up, get off. I have your new mattress that he then put on, thinking if the guards find out, I'm in trouble. And then 4 days after that, he actually brought me a list. I'm like, what's the list? He's like, this is what I need you to buy me in the commissary as a thank you for getting you that new mattress. I said, I've been taken by a prison hustler. I tell people that the first day in prison wasn't the hardest day. It's pretty fast. You adjust. It's just a whirlwind. It's a new experience. It goes by really, really quickly. The harder day for me was like 3 or 4 weeks in when it hit me how odd it is that it's 11 a.m. on a Tuesday in a minimum security camp and I'm doing like an abs class after running 7 miles. It's like, well, what am I doing here? I should be out working in the community, paying back the balance of my restitution to these victims that I owe money to. If some of these people saw the way that we live inside of a minimum security camp, walking the track, the tennis, the softball, the beach volleyball, the opportunities that you could watch television all day, the staff doesn't care. You could sleep all day, the staff doesn't care. This isn't corrections. This isn't best in class. This isn't what taxpayers want. So it hits you several weeks in like, wow, this is my life for a while. And then you realize that this can amount to a life sentence if you don't begin to accept responsibility for what's happened. And I began to see men getting scared to go home. And you think of a movie like Shawshank Redemption where Red says, I can't function in the modern world after serving 30 or 40 years in prison. I'm talking about someone serving 2 years for a tax crime, complaining that they don't want to take the halfway house and go home because they can no longer be an accountant or doctor or lawyer. They can't live without their license. They owe restitution. They can't pay rent or health care. And I saw men scared to go home. And that was very awakening for me. And through that time, I had found a mentor, someone who had been in prison for 22 years. His name is Michael Santos. He had been in prison for 22 years when I shook his hand. He served 8 years in the penitentiary, worked his way all the way down to the camp. And he begins to mentor me and guide me. And he helped me understand how I was making the same decisions of not accepting responsibility, of exercising all day, and how that was going to lead to lifelong disappointment and stain for my family, begging a friend from USC for a job out of loyalty, not because you have earned it. And then Michael said, do you think your story is any different from any of the white-collar guys around you? Didn't have bad intentions, didn't intend to end up here, didn't know how to hire a lawyer, regretted how they prepared for government investigation, weren't prepared for prison. Do you think any of them are different from you? Perhaps you could be a guide for them. Perhaps you can help them. But first you've got to learn to help yourself. So my life changed with Michael's help the 12th of October, 2008, which is really when this white-collar advice brand began. I wrote with Michael's help my first blog. There wasn't even email yet in prison. I hand wrote my first blog and sent it home to my mom and said, put this up on the internet. And at the end of that blog, I made a commitment to write every single day and put it on the internet to try to provide a glimpse into this foreign world of a minimum security camp. And I'd write in these blogs, there's no violence here. The highest value is boredom. There's not violence. Here's how to hold a lawyer accountable, prepare for sentencing or probation interview. This is what you need to ask your lawyer right now. This is how you prepare for prison. Don't do this, don't do that. I'm providing a glimpse into this world, but what I didn't understand when I began to write was some of the negative feedback that I would get and the reality that people didn't like that I was writing. One guy said, man, you are a frickin' tourist, a rich, privileged kid from USC serving 1 year. You are a tourist here. You have not earned the right to talk about prison. One prison, one stop, no Con Air, no shackles and chains, self-surrender. You have not earned the right to talk about prison. And I didn't try to defend myself and say, dude, I agree, I understand. I'm not an expert. I'm really writing for that doctor over there that just came in and he's really off his game and his wife won't visit with him because of the way he's responding. And I didn't do that. I just took the advice, listened, and moved on. But what happened was some prisoners' families were reading the blog and sending them in and saying, why aren't you adjusting like this guy? Why aren't you writing like this guy? And it led to some very uncomfortable conversations. But I knew in a camp, if I had adjusted pretty well, it's not like a guy was going to come after me, but I knew that what I wrote was being evaluated. And everything I put out there had to be very carefully written because it was off-putting to some guys and staff who didn't think that such a short timer should be producing. But I knew, despite some mockery and resistance, that I was writing for the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, the businessman, the entrepreneur who, like me, never imagined they would see their name versus the United States of America, and I could help them. I could provide some value. And I'm learning from Michael, who'd been inside for 22 years. He's mentoring and guiding me. So it was in prison in 2008 that I began to get it together and began to write and prepare for, frankly, what is the hardest part, coming home with a felony conviction and a sullied reputation. But now 16 years later, the outcome, Michael and I engineered the outcome that we wanted. I run White Collar Advice, which charges a fee for work that we do. Those fees that I obtain help support the nonprofit Prison Professors Charity, which influences millions of people in prisons and jails. Michael's in every Federal Bureau of Prison teaching. He's meeting with Josh Smith, the deputy director of the BOP, to influence more reform, Earning Freedom, a great book that Michael wrote that you should read. So we engineered this outcome, but it didn't change when I was released in 2009 to the halfway house in Hollywood, that there would be obstacles in front of me with a felony conviction, owing money, and in this new space, trying to guide people through a white-collar crime investigation. And I had cynicism with a probation officer who didn't think anyone would pay me to do it. I had cynicism from family who begged me just to not talk about prison, just to move on. Son, you're going to be successful. You went to USC. There's opportunity in front of you. Just move on from prison, please. And I think my parents had good intentions, but I also embraced this idea of you don't know what it's like. I think Bob Dylan's saying, don't criticize what you can't understand. I think people tried to help me, but they didn't understand what it's like to be a felon in prison, even though it was just 1 year, 388 days. It was the easiest part of the experience. They didn't understand what it was like to deal with such shame and disgust, press releases and crimes and victims and prison and depression and envy, sitting at home, the double doubles, the cheeseburgers, the chewing tobacco, the red man to the fact my teeth would bleed. And I'm not seeking sympathy. This is an adversity that I created, unlike so many people who suffer through no fault of their own. I know that. But I knew there was an otherness to white-collar crime. It's not like cancer that someone gets through no fault of their own. I chose this, and I knew that. So rather than run from it and not talk about the shame, I knew the way to overcome it would be to talk about it and write about it and provide a voice to those who don't want to get out of bed, can't brush their teeth, or who are suicidal. So upon my release from prison, I did the same exact thing I did when I was a 21-year-old stockbroker. I had a book that Michael helped me write called Lessons from Prison. I used my second 4-hour pass in the halfway house to cold walk through the streets of downtown Los Angeles. I cold walked in the same suit that I was sentenced in, that was once too tight and the buttons popped off. I had seen a cleaner the day before who said, this suit is unfixable, throw it in the trash. And the suit was now so huge after running, thousands of miles around that dusty dirt track. The suit was so huge, I looked like a fool. I looked totally absurd. I looked like a weirdo, truth be told. But a part of me felt like I needed to walk through the streets of downtown in that suit to close the loop, to return to a city where I had endured such shame and devastation. So just like I was a 21-year-old stockbroker trying to peddle stocks at Merrill Lynch, now I am a 34-year-old consultant out of prison, peddling my book, Lessons from Prison, into law offices on my second 4-hour pass where my mom picked me up. And I've told people, cold walking, that 5th day out of federal prison, despite everything I've been through over the last 16 years, the ups and downs that accompany this experience, is the most fulfilling and hardest thing I've ever done. I had to get past security guards and get into elevators with Lessons from Prison, my book, like in a big bag over my shoulder. I'll never forget my pitch. I would walk in and kind of say the same thing I said when I was 21. Hi, I'm Justin Paperny. I only need 30 seconds of your time. I have nothing to sell you. I was just released from federal prison, quite a journey. And I've written a book that I think would help your clients while going through all phases of a government investigation, indictment, sentencing, prison. The book's free. And I would just love to shake the hand of the criminal defense attorney in this office and leave him with several copies. And also some lawyers will leave it in the conference room for clients that come in and they hand it out. And I was like, I expected when I said my pitch, they'd be like, oh, this is incredible. Like, you wrote a book from prison? Before I give it to the lawyers, will you sign a copy for me? Of course I would. I'd love to sign a copy for you. This is incredible. Instead, you have everyone looking at me in this office in this huge suit, knowing that I was not invited, unsolicited. And the woman would say, like, who are you? Jason? I'm like, no, I'm Justin. I just need 30 seconds. I'm not trying to sell anything. I was so nervous. I defaulted to the same pitch I had just given. I froze. I didn't know what to do. And she said, yeah, Jason, Justin, whatever, leave the books, but you're not going to meet a lawyer. And I visited 9 more offices, and they all threw me out. One lady said, I'm going to call your federal probation officer. You're not invited. You're not allowed to be here. Get the F out. And I remember standing on the 10th floor in this building in downtown Los Angeles looking into this mirrored wall, and my first words were, my God, they hate me. These lawyers they hate me. They want nothing to do with me. This is awful. This isn't what I expected it to be. Though a part of me felt some dignity following through on what I said I would do in prison, trying to introduce my work to lawyers with hopes they would introduce it to their clients. But it was very humbling to get thrown out. And there was only one lawyer that day who shook my hand. His name was Mark Worksman, a very good lawyer in downtown, who shook my hand, took the book. And I couldn't believe that he took the book and shook my hand. I thought something was wrong because it was the last office that I walked into. And he called me the next morning while I was at the halfway house in Hollywood. He said, Justin, I read your book. He didn't say I loved your book. It's an excellent book. He just said, I read most of your book. And I'm like, that's a win. I'll take it. He said, send me 10 copies. And when I have clients in need, I'll hand it to them. And that was an incredibly fulfilling day for me because I knew based off him reviewing the book and calling and having the courage to cold walk into those offices with people looking at me that way, that I would be on my way to helping people who were in need. And that was all the way back in 2009.
So interesting. What are some of the big lessons you've learned in all of this? This has been such a crazy journey for you, right?
Well, I think something I learned from Michael, right? Like as human beings, we can make bad decisions, but it's how do you overcome it? How do you build on top of it? What new record do you create? And that's something we really discuss with people who are in the white collar advice community or the prison professors charitable community, right? So if you are indicted, there is a perception of you. A prosecutor has a perception of you. A judge has a perception of you. It would be naive to think that a judge is not biased. Of course they're biased. Most people plead guilty. If you go to trial, most lose, and they probably respect a probation officer and prosecutor more than you. So a huge lesson I've learned is in part through my own experience. You can't outsource work that only you can do as a defendant. You've got to assess, like, how am I influencing this judge to see, like, why I am different than this indictment or these terrible things they allege that I did, terrible things I acknowledge I did. What can I do for them to take the totality of my life into consideration? Too many defendants, they don't do that. They embrace this idea they have time. I'm going to get around to it, or I'm going to start a week before sentencing and make some great speech to a judge thinking it's going to influence the judge. I tell people they indicted you. The government's working full time to advance their case against you. The DOJ's issued press releases. You've been fired. You've been debanked. You've lost your licenses. It wasn't too early to give a big retainer to a lawyer, yet you're telling me it's too early to begin engineering the outcome that you want, trying to get the shortest sentence by creating through your own efforts that shows why you're a candidate for leniency. And the only way that someone can do that is if they do like what we do every single day. Like, you are a creator. If you were to give advice to someone on how to create, you have authority because you do it. You're an authority in the space, not by accident. Here's the asset, review my work. This many followers, this many views, this is what I make, this is what I do. It's not made up. But in this consulting space, you have people that prey on the vulnerable, who ask people to do what they have not done because people are vulnerable. They're scared. They want to avoid prison. They fall for hype or happy talk or gossip on how to avoid prison. So we tell people, we're not going to ask you to do what we don't do every single day, which is to create. We create for people in trouble. The viewer, if you're in a government investigation, you are our stakeholder. Books, podcasts, courses, webinars, we create for you with hopes that it helps you engineer the outcome you want. You need to do that same thing to try to influence a judge or a probation officer, or if you get sentenced to prison, what do you want? You want to get out early. How do you get out early? You influence a case manager and warden or probation officer. The earlier you can do that, the better. Which is why I frequently tell people, despite what media may call me, I am not a federal, do not call me a prison consultant. I'm not a prison consultant, despite what you may read or see. And that's a huge lesson that I've learned. I served 1 year in a minimum security camp 16 years ago. I am not a fixer. For someone to serve 1, 2, or 3 years in one camp and brand themselves a fixer or a healer and they can change your life, they are lying to you. They're asking you to do something they have never done. They're selling hope. Perhaps it's therapeutic for you. You don't need a consultant. You should learn from masters and experts, people who have done what they're asking you to do. And that's what I found in Michael, whom you interviewed, my friend who did 26 consecutive years in prison, who runs the nonprofit. I knew I had an opportunity to learn from a master
who had documented 26 years. When he's at the BOP right now, meeting with the deputy director and implementing his programs in all of these prisons with millions of prisoners benefiting, it's because he began engineering that outcome in 1987, education.
Michael
Santos, 87 prison, undergraduate, master's degree, begins to write, forms relationships with penologists like Peter Celia from Stanford, Bruce McPherson from University of Connecticut, getting involved in corrections, writing his first book, Inside Life Behind Bars in America, mentoring and teaching. He is an authority. He has respect. He is a real expert. So I knew when I met Michael in prison, this was my opportunity. I can't claim to have his knowledge. I served 1 year. Yet people come into this space and think because they can create a YouTube channel with a video, how to survive your first day in prison, it makes them an expert. They are not. Do your due diligence. Ask questions. Speak to people. Have they done what they are asking you to do? The answer is hell no. Good God. That's been a huge lesson that I have learned. We are advising people to learn from masters. In the age of AI, you can create. You can do it. If you want guidance, we're here. Or do it on your own. But at this point in my life, at 50 with a young family and some semblance of success, like I'm looking to reform and change, help change this really wretched criminal justice system. We create an experience through our white collar advice community. What I mean is, I'll acknowledge, I never thought about prison when I got into trouble. Had you asked me as a young kid or young executive what I thought about people in prison, I said they're bad. Lock them up, man. They're there for a reason. Then you get to prison and you realize many of the men are smart, they're capable, they've had opportunities, or they have not had opportunities perhaps I wasted. They need a second chance, they need values, they need skills, but they are hardworking and they just need an opportunity. And that's what the nonprofit provides. And I want to be a part of that. So when people come into the white collar advice community, certainly we do the necessary sentencing and mitigation work, but they need to know they are supporting this transformation through the nonprofit of helping influence millions of people in prisons and jails. So when they hire us and Michael goes to the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP doesn't pay for that. White collar advice does. Thousands of books that Michael donates every year. The BOP doesn't pay for that. We do. The travel of visiting 100 prisons in the next year, every penitentiary and every prison, the BOP doesn't pay for that. We do. So by joining our community, it's not because you need a consultant. It's because, sure, our team can help you engineer the outcome you want, but also it's to influence millions of people traversing this system, including a system you never thought that you would be in. And you ask about lessons learned. It was hard for me to say that when I came home from prison because I had to embrace this fake it and make it, act like I knew everything. And the more I acknowledge how little I knew that I learned from someone, the irony is that our business has grown dramatically, which allows us to influence the nonprofit, which influences millions of people. So that's what I encourage people going through crisis. I know what it's like to be vulnerable, to not be able to get out of bed or function, to never imagine in a million years that you would be here. You have to be very careful about the help that you get and how you invest your resources, because the only thing you want is to engineer the best outcome possible. And how do you do that? You've got to somehow show these people that you're different than your plea agreement, different than what a victim is going to say about you at a sentencing hearing. And the earlier you do that, the better too, because when you go to prison, like you have a case manager that's going to what? They're going to look at the probation interview. They're going to look at victim impact statements. They're going to look at the sentence, the guidelines, the loss. Like someone chose to become a case manager for a reason. Put yourself in their shoes. You've got to work to overcome that cynicism. The earlier you can do that, the better. I just served time with too many good men and have done this for 16 years with too many people who all say the same thing. Man, what I would do for a do-over. Like they don't exist, just do better moving forward. And I'm hopeful if someone watches this, they recognize to be the CEO of your own life, you've got to lead, you've got to create, you've got to embrace some discomfort. Like cold walking into those law offices was uncomfortable. It was hard to get thrown at and even laughed at. But it would have been harder if I sat back in that halfway house, the Vinewood halfway house in Hollywood, and just thought about what I wanted to do because I was afraid to put myself out there. You've got to try. You've got to think differently if you're a convicted criminal. You can't go toe-to-toe with people anymore, not in the age of Google and AI where everything is searchable in 7 seconds. You've got to show how you're stronger because of this. You've got to be able to say, as a result of my time through prison, as a result of my experience, I'm actually a better asset for your company because of what I've learned. I've actually documented it. I wrote journals. I wrote book reports at prisonprofessors.org. So you can see I just didn't go to programming. Here's what I learned from it. I just didn't read a book. Here's why I read the book, how the book will help me moving forward. If you don't build digital assets that you can share with cynical people, here's what's going to happen. They're not going to believe us because they view us as liars because we've been to prison and we broke the law. People are cynical. And if you don't embrace that cynicism and think differently, you're going to get what I hear too often. No one will hire me. No one will talk to me. It's not fair. I'm like, dude, you've been home from prison for 12 years. You served 18 months at Leavenworth 12 years ago for insider trading. And you're still, what are you doing for 12 years? Well, no one will hire me. No one will talk to me. Well, what have you done for the last, wasn't willing to try? What job opportunities did you turn down? I have sympathy for people going through a government investigation, no doubt. They have got to embrace that the earlier they begin preparing, the better. And sometimes that means doing a task that could be beneath their skill set. I know doctors that work at Home Depot, drive for Lyft, work at KFC here in Hollywood by the halfway house. If your job isn't approved, that's where you're going, to KFC. We want to engineer something different. But if KFC is where you're going, that's where you're going. It's part of the journey. Some don't want to do that. It's beneath them. Why? I was a doctor, a lawyer, not anymore. I'm not a stockbroker at Bear Stearns anymore. So it's embracing and recognizing the reality that is your life and saying, okay, have others overcome it? That's a sense of perspective I try to bring to people in this community. In advance of this interview, I binge watch hours of your videos. And my first thought was, wow, you have interviewed people who have not had opportunity, resources that you could argue I squandered. Wow, some of the stories. But I hear people are grateful, they're upbeat, they're optimistic about what's next. They focus on what they have rather than all that they have lost. I'm thinking, if they're grateful with that, how can you, with a wife and children standing alongside you and your education and some resources remaining, not be grateful? Yeah, you're going to a camp for 18 months. I'm sorry, but people have had it worse. Let's learn from those who have overcome. That is one of the greatest lessons I've learned. You learn to focus on what remains rather than what you've lost. And I think that's frankly the biggest lesson I've learned from watching so many of your videos and some of the most incredible stories. There's nothing like it, frankly, in the world. And it would be hard not to watch and learn and study and admire those who have not had any similarities in your own life. But you can learn from them. And I just wanted you to know that on a personal note. I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the most important things I've learned in life is when you have these kind of setbacks, these terrible, like life-breaking setbacks, that's an opportunity to that's a situation where you're either going to crumble or you're going to use that pain and misery that you're feeling to rebuild yourself into a better person and create something even better. You'll end up better than you were in the first place if this had never happened.
You've got to let it, there has to be a challenge to it, like a desire to want to win. And for me, when I didn't want to let 18, really easy months in a minimum security camp, easy months. You're never going to have it easier, Mark. No children. I wasn't married. I met Michael, who became my mentor. I'm really an ambassador of his message. I'm his best student. I joke in my new book that I was going to turn down the halfway house so I can stay in prison longer to continue to learn from him. That's how easy it was working with him. I didn't want to let the 18 months become a life sentence like it is for that executive who's been home from Leavenworth for 12 years who still talks about going to prison. It's defined the rest of his life. That's terrible. That's awful. The DOJ, the prison system, has gotten his entire life. I didn't want that for me. I don't want that for anyone. Let them get their sentence, not one day more. But don't let them win. Don't let this define the rest of your life. So when I've had really wonderful things that have happened over the years, some uncomfortable things too, but when I recall when the agent that arrested me invited me to go to Quantico, Virginia to train agents, and he introduced me and said, he's here because of the lessons he has learned. I think he can help all of you FBI agents do your job better, investigate better, the way that you perceive people you charge and investigate. I think you can do a better job. A part of me is like, wait a second. This guy who arrested me, I'm about to speak to 1,000 agents, and he's telling them, listen to him. he will help you understand the mindset of people you're investigating. It may help you do your job better, including who you choose to charge and not charge. That was very fulfilling because now I'm like, okay, I have this experience through prison. I'm learning, and maybe this agent over there will do his job better. And many came up to me and said, I never expected you to say prison was the easiest part of the process. I'm like, of course. It's clearly defined with a beginning and an end. It's the guy that you're investigating who's suffering right now. That's the real pain. The collateral consequence, you should know, is in prison for a lot of guys, Mr. New Agent. It's what does the rest of his life look like because of this conviction? What's this like for his wife and children while he goes through this? What will he do again for work? You need to see Mr. FBI agent. This is a collateral consequences. We don't need to continue to warehouse people in prison for sentences that are too long. It's already a lifelong stain. And many of them said to me, I have it in a letter from the FBI, I didn't consider that perspective. We just presume prison's the hardest part. It's not walking the track of a minimum security camp for 18 months. It's not. It's everything that follows. And the earlier someone can understand that, the better. But you're right, it can define the rest of your life, or you can recognize what really helped me is perspective, why literature is so important in prison. You learn from people who have endured such pain and struggle and trauma. And it's like, well, they emerged. Like if they did it without loving parents who send me money for commissary and a degree from USC in my youth, like if they did it, like I can probably do it too, considering they have it 1,000 times worse. They can do it, maybe so can I. That's how I've always approached everything. This guy out of prison did it with harder circumstances. So can I. So can I. So can I. But it doesn't change that, it's hard and it can be humbling to work at KFC. I get it. I picked up phone for 3 months when I came home from prison. It was kind of humbling. But it was better than being in prison or being in the halfway house or continuing to lament that I'm a victim. I'm not. And to your point, if you did something wrong, Mark, and we send a lot of innocent people to prison, that's a different conversation. A lot of innocent people in prison shouldn't be there. And we charge too many people. But if you did do it, you can't really rebuild and recalibrate, or as I write, come up after the fall, unless there is some acceptance of responsibility. And that really was helpful to me when I finally began to write in my blog, and some victims wrote me letters. So I am responsible for my decisions in life. Even though everyone in my case got their money back, it doesn't change the pain and shame that I put them through. As a result of my self-centered, selfish, shallow, disgusting criminal actions, they suffered. And I want you to know I'm accountable and I'm sorry and I'll do better. And what's interesting, if I may, is how many victims call me. Because on the White Collar Advice YouTube channel or TikTok, I talk about life in a minimum security camp. And we've worked with, you Google it, most high profile people that are reaching out to our company, we're helping. And people that aren't high profile, victims watch. And they're like, Justin, Mary in Virginia calling. I just watched your video about life in Leavenworth Federal Prison Camp. I'm more irate than ever. What happened? Got a guy that stole, $300,000 from me. All I wanted was for him to go to prison. That's all I wanted. I went to a sentencing hearing. All I wanted, that's it. And now I just watch your video. Like, is he having the time of his life there? Bocce ball? Pickleball? Like, how is this just? How is this fair, Justin? Help me reconcile. This is a victim. I said, well, Mayor, what's success for you? I want my money back. You should get your money back. Do you think it would make more sense for this person who's serving whatever time in Leavenworth Federal Prison Camp, playing pickleball or bocce ball that you don't like? Do you think it would make more sense for him to be working with the lion's share of that income coming back to you? And she said, I never would have thought about that or felt that way until I saw your videos. You're right. I wish he was home. I wish he was working. I want my money back. And I get a sense that the biggest suffer isn't what he's doing right now in a camp, even if he misses his kids. I know he can't be a doctor, lawyer, businessman to that degree anymore. I just want my money back, and I need him home to be working to get my money back. So this is the fascination of white-collar crime, and having probably 5 victims a month reach out to me, one way or the other, saying, I thought he'd suffer more. I really did. And I think it's healthy if people acknowledge what the experience is like. Don't fabricate it, as too many people do. And just acknowledge, if you did it, what you learned from it, it will never happen again. If you created victims, you've got to identify with victims first. I yelled at a defendant on the way here this morning because he's getting sentenced tomorrow, just came into our community, and he read me a sentencing statement. And it opens up with, I'm sorry the people I disappointed. I'm like, dude, you didn't disappoint people. Disappointed is I was supposed to call my mom on Sunday. I didn't. She sent me a text you didn't call. That's disappointment. You didn't disappoint. You stole from them. Millions. Own it. Acknowledge it. That's the only thing your judge is thinking about. You call that a disappointment? He's like, yeah, that makes more sense. That's why some people get 3 or some people get 7. They haven't developed the appropriate message, and there's no record behind it. I could talk for days. I won't. To your point, if you made a bad decision and you want to come up after the fall, it's easier when you say, I blame no one. I did it. Here's how I'm going to build a new record moving forward. Judge me on who I'm becoming rather than who I was. You can't do that through talk. You've got to develop it.
Yeah, taking accountability is the key.
There's no make-believe or happy talk. That's one thing I learned from Michael. He uses the words, happy talk. They don't believe our words. I've been to 1,500 sentencing hearings. Judges say, that was a beautiful statement. Articulate statement. Thank you for sharing it. No evidence. Sounds great. Don't know if it's real. No evidence behind it. A lot of happy talk. They don't believe our words. They look at us as criminals. If you don't have a record that shows that you are different, how are they going to judge you any differently? They're going to rely on the victims, the prosecutor, the probation report.
So even the accountability doesn't mean shit unless you've...
Accountability is like a throwaway word. It's a cliche. It sounds good, but what does that actually mean? Accountability is, Your Honor, I pled guilty on, you tell a probation officer. Tell someone, I pled guilty to a crime. I sign a plea agreement. Okay. I'd have been stronger and potentially avoided prison had I actually held myself accountable, if I developed the right message. So you sign a plea agreement, you say, I'm going to do something over the next 12 months before my sentencing hearing. I'm going to get therapy. I'm going to get help. I'm going to work at a job beneath my skill set and set aside half of that income for my victims through restitution. I'm going to begin to volunteer and contribute to those who have not had opportunities that I have had. In some instances, that could be cooperating with the government as much as we hear the prison talk, prison snitches get stitches and all that stuff. That is a way to mitigate and to work your way to a shorter sentence. So it starts with acceptance, showing that you're part of the solution, demonstrating through a record how you will never return to another courtroom. Too many defendants don't. They don't do that. They just sit back and say, well, I hired a lawyer who's a former prosecutor and now he's a defense attorney and he knows the judge and he used to work in that office. I'm like, who cares? I'd get a federal public defender that's more engaged, that believes you can change how they perceive and view you. And too many defendants don't do that. They just sit back and wait. So yes, they're very, very cynical. And they should be, because you broke the law. It's very serious. You broke the law, you signed a plea agreement or were convicted at trial. It's a really big deal. And to think that people don't think they can influence or change the result is a shame. And we get a number of those calls from people who, they've just been sentenced. They're like, oh my God, I've been sentenced, or I went to Google or AI, and you came up and I saw these interviews that you did with federal judges. I didn't know that I could change the outcome. It's like we've interviewed federal judges who tell you what to do. Whether you do it or not is up to you. And they have just continued heartbreak because now they broke the law. They get a longer sentence than they should, and they say the same thing I said earlier. They all want a do-over. They don't exist. And it's a big business, this white-collar crime, and sentences, it's very severe. And there's very little sympathy for the white-collar criminal. And I tell people, embrace it. Own it. It's true. You had opportunity. You had some privilege. You had some money. People are going to argue it was never enough. If it's true, own it. Talk about it. Become better. That's the only way I was able to overcome, and I had help with a mentor through Michael. We encourage people to get help and learn. And recognize you're not going to have everyone in your corner. And know it, man, you don't need everyone in your corner. You don't need that many yeses. There are always going to be people that might hate what you do. Rebuilding. People hated my blog or the book. I didn't serve long enough. They didn't like when I said, I'm not a prison consultant. You don't need a prison consultant. We give everything away for free. They didn't like that message because it disrupted the industry. I'm like, you don't need a prison consultant. It's all free. Come to our webinar every week. If you want help engineering and outcome creating and building, that is not what a prison consultant does. But everything I learned from Michael, he did 26 years. They don't like that message because it gets in the way of the guy who served 15 months like I'm the fixer, I'm the expert. They don't like it. People mock that. People are going to loathe and hate what you do. Well, that's okay, because you don't need that many yeses to be really, really successful. Which the last thing I'll say is you've got to be cultivating your network while in prison. right? There are people who might watch this who have been to prison who think, okay, well, I shut out the outside world. It's an easier way to serve time, right? My sentence was so brief, but there are people who will go for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they won't visit. They won't send letters home. They won't cultivate their network. And it's much harder to function that way. Some of the white collar guys do that too. It's like, well, then you come home, you're really like releasing to like a new world. You haven't been nurturing this entire way. And because prison's harder on those that love and support you. It's harder on the wife and kids. They want to see what you're doing, what you're building, that you're making the most of it. It's very hard in prison with a family. But a lot of people, unfortunately, shut them out. And I'd encourage people to recognize it. It is harder on them.
Justin, let the viewers know where they can reach you.
Oh, thank you. So we produce a lot of free content. There's the White Collar Advice YouTube channel. There's TikTok White Collar Advice, Instagram White Collar Advice team. And every Tuesday, we lead a free webinar through whitecollaradvice.com. We talk about preparing for sentencing, prison, building a record for cynical stakeholders like a judge and prosecutor and probation officer, preparing for prison in a best-in-class way, building a plan, how to share that plan with your judge and probation officer. So there's no pitching or selling on the webinars. We have nothing to sell. It's all free. That's how I open the webinar. I lead it every single week. It's Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We have anywhere from 40 to 200 people on there every single week, depending on the subject, families, people going through the system, lawyers. We've had retired case managers, judges on there. It's all geared towards helping you make the best decisions possible as you traverse this really wretched system. So I think the best tools would be whitecollaradvice.com, the White Collar Advice YouTube channel. And lastly, you should spend time at prisonprofessors.org, which is a nonprofit that gives away tons of resources. And there's also a mechanism on there on the profile tab that allows people in prison to document their journey through prison at no cost. So currently there's 3,000 profiles right now on the .org site. Michael's going to grow it, I believe, to 10,000. But if you develop that online profile for free, you can share that with your judge, with a case manager, with a probation officer. And White Collar Advice helps subsidize all the costs of these nonprofits. So whitecollaradvice.com, White Collar Advice YouTube, I would say, and prisonprofessors.org.
Awesome. What an incredible talk.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you.
All right. When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.